Really fun one for you guys today. Hopped on with Jason Burke of Locked On Oakland A's. We talked about their farm system, some of the guys that I really like in there, previewed some guys who will be available in the Rule 5 draft, and looked at the top of the 2023 draft class. So even if you're not an A's fan, tons of stuff in here that you might like. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, A's fans, and welcome to the Locked On A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, noted baseball fan Jason Burke, and on today's show, we are joined by, wait for it, Lindsey Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsey, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. Hello, West Coast. I am a fan of you. Your weather is phenomenal. Every time I've been out there, I've loved it. And you have a ton of minor league baseball. It's fun. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Jason.
No worries. It's always fun to learn a little bit more about A's prospects other than like what you read and glean from things that you read. So I'm happy to have you here. But before we get into anything, thank everybody so much for making Locked On A's and Locked On MLB Prospects your first listen of the day. We are both free and available on all platforms, including on YouTube, where you can watch this. And we may also have a YouTube exclusive coming up for you guys at the end of the show. I'm going to be asking this guy over here where he would trade Sean Murphy and which one prospect he would need in return in that trade package. That's a YouTube exclusive, so make sure to tune in on YouTube if you're not already. But let's get into today's episode, Lindsey. And I want to talk about the A's farm system as it sits right now, before the Rule 5 draft, before the 2023 draft. What are your assessments of the A's just farm system in general? Where does it rank loosely among the farm systems in all of baseball?
So the farm system, to me, it's really interesting because it's got really good strength as far as pitching. There's a ton of pitching options. There's a ton of arms here. Not as strong in the middle infield. You know, it's shortstop, second base. I'd even group a little bit of third base, first base into that. Infielders in general. Some people will say that the system is strong with catching. The organization as a whole is strong with catching. I wouldn't necessarily say the minor leagues are strong with catching. Tyler Soderstrom's expected to move to first base. Shea Langeliers is technically still a prospect, but not really. And so you have a lot of catchers in the organization, but maybe not so much as far as pure prospects at catcher. Still a strength, but not of the farm system. As far as where it ranks in the different organizations, I would probably have it somewhere, and this sounds like a cop-out, I'd probably have it somewhere 18 to 20. Okay. And to me, it's something where the trades at the deadline, the trades last offseason, they really helped, especially upper level depth. Guys who are in AAA, guys who can compete, who have already made the big leagues, like Langeliers, like a Waldichuk, Luis Medina, things like that. But I think that one more excellent draft could push this into a top 10 organization as long as you go out and target the right kind of guys.
I like it. Which Ace prospects are currently on your radar? You mentioned some of them coming over in trades. Who's on your radar currently?
So one of the guys, and people who listen to Locked On MLB Prospects will know from last week when we talked about Rookie of the Year, I mentioned this guy as a sleeper pick to get Rookie of the Year votes, but left-hand pitcher Ken Waldichuk. I am a big fan of the St. Mary's hurler. One, I love funky lefties. He is the definition of funky. I mean, you give me three pitches that are at least average or better. I'd say the fastball's plus, the changeup's above average, and then everything comes out of just a really unique delivery, really just kind of, there's a ton of deception, ton of extension. And so the fastball velocity may not be blow you off the, 94, 95 isn't excessively high, but one, for a lefty, it's pretty good. He can touch 98, and then with the extension, the tailing action on the fastball, it really plays up, especially when he throws it up in the zone, and then playing that off of the slider at the bottom of the zone. I really like the combination there. I know we got about 7 games. The ERA wasn't great, but He didn't allow too many home runs, kept the walks. I think he had about 10 walks in those 34 or so innings. So big fan of Ken Waldichuk. Think he could get Rookie of the Year votes next year, but it's going to have to be from the newer voters who are aware of the analytics, because as I'm sure you've talked about, the win-loss record may not be fantastic next year. And so it's going to have to be based off of his individual prowess as far as keeping traffic off the base paths and limiting home runs.
I do have to mention real quick, though, Ken Waldichuk has 2 wins in his big league career. One of those came against Jacob deGrom, and the other one came against Shohei Ohtani. So, yeah,
wild.
He can battle with the best of them. Rookie of the Year is basically solidified already.
Yeah, I mean, he got thrown into the fire rather quickly. It's just so funny to think about. May 15th, he faces off against Double A Altoona, and then 2.5 months later, he's making his debut against Washington. Like it's just such a wild variance there between how it started and now how it's going. And not a lot of guys can handle that. And credit to him. Credit to the St. Mary's University program for developing pitchers who are very advanced and mentally prepared as well as physically prepared, just to be able to get him to that point that quickly.
Who else is standing out to you from the A system?
It's not only from the minor leagues, but then from the Arizona Fall League as well. But Lawrence Butler.
Yeah.
I was a fan of Lawrence Butler already. I think he's probably the best power hitter in this system, but especially kind of seeing what he did in the Fall League combined with the minors. The big thing for me, whenever you see a big power guy, something we always say on my show is your power tool is only as good as your hit tool. And when you look at Lawrence Butler, and it's like he struck out 81 games, struck out 105 times. When you look at the stat, it's a little bit concerning as far as the amount of strikeouts, right? 30-something%. But when you go and you look at why he struck out, it's not poor swing decisions. He's not a hacker up there. It's very much mechanical and something that you can work on. He's got the long levers. And so when he lengthens his swing, like a lot of lefty power hitters do, trying to get that power, he makes holes in there, and his bat struggles to catch up to stuff, especially up in the strike zone. So it's things that are correctable. It's not poor decisions, and it's not being overly aggressive. If anything, he's not aggressive enough at the plate. But knowing that it's a mechanical tweak versus a mindset and a behavior adjustment makes me feel good about the ability to make the fix. And then you look at, he had like 33 extra base hits in 80 games, still walked 40 times, and has played all 3 outfield positions. I think he's probably a corner outfielder, and then obviously having first base as well. All of that just gives a lot of versatility, and it's hard not to like a guy like a Lawrence Butler. I actually think he won the sportsmanship award in the AFL.
Yes. And he also, in the AFL, walked as many times as he struck out. I think it was 15 each, 13 each, somewhere in there. But yeah, it seemed like he developed, or at least the stats were right there for him as to what you were saying there.
Yeah, it's definitely, if there were things to be concerned about, he's answered a lot of the questions. And now we know that this is not an approach issue. This is not an aggressiveness issue. This is just a mechanical tweak, and that can be fixed in an offseason. And I think you saw him start to fix that in the Arizona Fall League, because when he did get struck out, it was because the dude had really good stuff. It wasn't because swings and misses and holes in the swing.
I like it. One guy that I am very intrigued by, and he's only played in rookie ball so far because he was the A's second-round draft pick in 2022 this season. That's Henry Bolte. He is a power-speed combo guy. I think he has a lot of upside, huge amounts of upside. I'm very intrigued by him. He's also the A's number 5 overall guy, according to MLB Pipeline prospect. That's the word I was looking for. The number 5 overall prospect on MLB Pipeline. So he's a surefire Hall of Famer. But let me know a little bit more about him.
So what's great about Henry Bolte is tons of tools, right? So power is plus power. His speed plus speed. His defense in center field plus defense. His arm, I'd give him a plus arm. And in center field, 6'3", 198. So he has good size. The question's going to be, if he continues to physically develop, is he able to stick in center? I think he's going to be able to, just from what I've seen. He's looked very, very good, very athletic, very smooth. Looks like he should be able to stick in center. So not a question there.
Okay.
My question is about the contact tool. And there's a couple of things in play here. So his bat speed's great, but he also has some of those long levers. And so he gets swings and misses in the zone. Again, I think you can fix over time some mechanical adjustments. He was 18 years old. I mean, it's and some of the things you see from 18-year-olds, he already started to clean up a bit. A lot of like chasing breaking balls is something that you can get just about any teenager to do. He started to get better at that. Pitch recognition, strike zone discipline, things like that. But the setup's a little bit unorthodox, and the mechanics of the swing, both the length and the swing angle, things like that. A little bit of work to do. So I'm concerned about where the power tool is going to end up.
Okay.
And I think there's a potential that it may cap out at like average. But even then, that's the only thing that is not a plus tool. And so that's a guy where you have a very high floor because you can play defense and center field at a high level. And that's a position where you can take a little bit less offense. I mean, he doesn't need to be a Christian Pache out there, but a little bit less offense. So if he ends up being only average with the hit tool, you've still got a high floor to sit on. But I do think the sky's the limit. And if you can figure that out, and if you can get that hit tool to above average or plus, you're looking at a guy who's going to regularly contend for all-star games and get MVP votes. Like that's the ceiling for a Henry Bolte.
So surefire Hall of Famer is what I heard there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. We're going to talk about the Rule 5 draft here in just a second. But first, we got to talk about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer. There's the World Cup. That's a thing. The U.S. tied with Wales today, not the animal, the place. And they also got esports, and they've got it all over at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and I'm guessing you do because you're listening to one currently, you can find those over at BetOnline as well. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline, my friends, that's where the game starts. And so with that, welcome back to the Locked On A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This has been very informative so far, but Lindsay, got more questions for you pertaining to the Rule 5 draft. It's in a couple of weeks at the end of the winter meetings, and it is always very exciting to me. But for the A's, I think that we're looking for like a high ceiling kind of a guy, somebody who can also stick in the big league level for the entirety of the season, because they have to, or else we got to give them away. So who's in that realm? Who's a high upside guy that the A's can get? Maybe they don't have the upper minors experience, but who can the A's get in the top 2 picks there? And then hopefully they stick around for the entirety of the season.
So the number one guy that I've kind of been targeting in the Rule 5 draft, a guy that I know for a fact is going to get taken by someone, is Antoine Kelly, the left-handed pitcher out of Texas. Mm-hmm. So one, incredibly tall. He's like 6'6", 6'7", something like that. Yeah. But fastball, slider, and the thing there is very unusual angle and arm slot. So he's very tall, and then you combine that with the slot and the release point, on all of that coming out of a lefty frame. It's just an unusual profile. So it's something where the fastball's got plenty of juice, the slider has good break to it, and then again, when it comes from that height to that approach angle, and that the movement that he gets, the horizontal break that he gets on the slider, it makes it very tough for hitters to pick up. The issue, and the reason he was not protected in the Rule 5 draft, is he walks a lot of guys. 109 2/3 innings last year, 71 walks, which is a lot. He struck out a ton of guys, but there's control issues. And part of that comes from, and I feel like I've been saying this a lot today, but he's got such long levers. The proprioception and kind of having control isn't a thing that happens a lot. Having control issues happens a lot to those really tall pitchers. And so if you can bring him in, I think he's somebody who, if you work it out, if you work the control out to even get it to average, he's a guy that profiles to me as a setup man or a closer, like a high leverage inning kind of guy. Right. But the question is, I mean, 71 walks and 109 2/3 innings. Part of that was because he was throwing the slider more and working on the control, but it's still a little bit of an adventure whenever the ball comes out of his hand as far as where is it going. And so the tools are so good, somebody's going to take him. And even if Oakland maybe necessarily doesn't want him, somebody picking behind them will, and you can always take him and trade him to them, and then they have to deal with keeping him rostered all year. Yeah. You get to keep the prospect.
I like that idea. I mean, we talked about this before the show, but that's how the A's got Mark Canha. They let the Rockies pick him, and then they traded, I think it was Adrian House was the guy's name. I don't think he ever made the majors either, but yeah, they traded a prospect for Mark Canha and got him, and he had a long career with the A's until they let him walk and sign with the Mets. And now he is beloved and showing up on Good Morning America and judging pies. So what a career path for Mark Canha, former Rule 5 pick.
Not usually the way you script it out, but if it works, it works, right?
It did okay for him. If you're the A's, who are you taking? I know that you said Antoine Kelly, but who are some other guys? They've tended to go with position players, but I think that it makes sense for them to go with a pitcher this time around. They've taken some guys. They've had some misses of late, but they've also had some hits in recent years too. So who are you taking if you're the A's?
Yeah. Position players are a little bit harder to carry on your roster the entire year if they're not working out. You only have 3 or 4 bench spots, whereas most teams have more guys in the bullpen. You can stash this guy away, throw him in a blowout, not a big deal. Yeah. Indigo Diaz is a relief pitcher for the Braves that was not protected and somebody that I've had my eye on for quite a while. So power reliever, big body. I want to say he's like 6'4", 6'5", 250.
Yeah.
So just physical frame there. Had a lot of success in the high minors. He was spent just about all year last year in AAA. So plenty of experience there, but too many walks as well. Walked about 5.5 guys per 9 innings. Now, part of that was the Braves were asking him to work on specific things, but you could tell they never really got comfortable with his success because they never called him up. The different injuries the Braves had they went out and traded for relievers at the deadline. They never called him up to the big leagues. So he's close enough to the show where I think he can work out, and he's talented enough where I don't think there's a lot of adjustments have to be made. He's just maybe not good enough to crack the bullpen of, a top 6, top 8 team in baseball. That's something where you can't really afford to learn on the job. And that's why you see so many pitching prospects, high-level pitching prospects get traded from contenders because they may be just about ready. They're about to be a 40-man roster decision guy, like a Ken Waldichuk, but the contending team doesn't necessarily have room to let them learn on the job. So Indigo Diaz, if I'm a Braves front office exec, I'm probably finding a way to squeeze him into the roster, but they left him unprotected. That can be a guy that is close enough to the majors where Oakland can use him all season out of the bullpen with very little refinement needed.
I like that. And, the A's are a bottom 29 or 30 team. So, yeah, they've got some room for guys that need to have some time. And also they've had success in helping guys, become better pitchers or just giving them the space to learn. And so that's kind of where we are right now. And, whatever, it's fine. One guy that is a position player that for some reason I'm intrigued by, I know that he's had injuries and whatnot, and he hasn't played. I think he's played under 200 professional games, even though he's 27 years old. And that is Jake Mangum of the New York Mets. He's a defensive specialist. So, you could just throw him out there with Christian Pache and say, screw it. But he also played like 33 games, I believe, in AAA. He hit well. He had some pop. He has a little bit of speed. He's an interesting guy. Do you think he gets drafted, and would he be, I'm not saying with like their first pick, but if they come around a second time and he's still available in the second round of the big league portion, could you see the A's taking a guy like him?
I absolutely think Jake Mangum's going to get drafted. He's one of those, just kind of like Henry Bolte. He's that high floor because he plays great defense. He's whatever system he goes to, he's probably going to be the best defensive outfielder in that system. Yeah. Above average runner, above average arm, can stick in center field without a question. And so with Christian Pache there in Oakland, I don't know if there's room for a second, in essence, Christian Pache. Now, he hit better in AAA. Like you said, it was like 333, 365, 471. The power has never really been part of his game. I think that's probably one of the highest slugging percentages he's had in his entire minor league career. It's reassuring that it happened in AAA. The question is, over 33 games, is this small sample size, or is this he made some sort of adjustment? Because, I mean, he hit 2 home runs in 36 games in AA Binghamton, 2 home runs in 33 games in AAA Syracuse. How much of that is park factors? How much of that is adjustment? How much of that is sample size? But if he's around the second time, which I don't think he will be, he's worth, if nothing else, he's worth going out and getting because you can trade him to someone else. There was probably 4 or 5 teams I can think of right now. The Marlins one that hit me that need a center fielder pretty desperately, and he would fit in right away. So even if Oakland doesn't want to take him because you don't want to duplicate the Christian Pache great defense, low offense situation, there are definitely teams who could use him. And I think that he would get taken by the second go around.
He also doesn't strike out a lot, which is something that the A's have seemingly been going after a little bit more of late. And so that also adds to the intrigue of him potentially coming to the Oakland A's. I don't know that they necessarily need to be taking offensive players because they have plenty of minor league free agents to go after for that. And then, Aaron Judge. It's going to be Aaron Judge and minor league free agents around the diamond. It's going to be 2023 is going to be a blast.
You've got plenty of salary space for it.
Yeah, so much salary space. We could pay Aaron Judge $70 million a year if we wanted to, and still be under $100 million. Anyways, is there anybody else that's on your radar in the Rule 5 draft that might not go to the A's, but just to keep in mind as somebody who you're like, that guy's going to stick and he's going to be okay?
Yeah, so Eric Miller is a lefty for the Phillies, fastball, changeup, slider guy, and his issue hasn't necessarily been walks. His issue has been health. He hasn't been available, and health is a skill somewhat. You can't necessarily train it or work it, but health is a skill. And Eric Miller's somebody that he does have some strike throwing issues. A lot of prospects do, but his main issue has been health, and the stuff is good enough where I absolutely think he's going to get taken. Somebody that's talked about a lot for the Rule 5 draft that I don't think is going to get taken despite what you hear a lot is right-hand pitcher Jairo Iarte of the Padres. His name comes up all the time, and I understand why. The tools are incredibly appealing. He looks very, very good. But for his career, he's got 100 and a third innings in A-ball, and he's never been above that. And so the major league portion of the Rule 5 draft, that is a huge jump to make. I don't necessarily think he might go. Now, in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft, there is a very real possibility that someone takes him and says, yeah, we can stick him in AA for a year. That is fine. That's probably age-wise getting to be where he needs to be anyway. So major league portion of the Rule 5 draft, no. But minor league, Jairo Iarte is probably getting taken by somebody and stuck into AA.
I'm intrigued. I definitely had him on my list, and I was like, he's not going to make it for the big league portion, but minor league portion, I like it. And people were worried that Rubio Angeles would be taken in the Rule 5 draft, and I don't think that's necessarily a thing that's going to happen. They're going to stick him on the AAA roster. He's going to be protected. He'll be with the A system. He came over from the San Diego Padres, actually, in the Shamania trade. He looks good. I'm intrigued by him. He's safe. He's safe, you guys, unless somebody really wants him and sticks him on the big league roster for the entirety of the season. And I don't see that happening because that would be wild. He's 20 years old and has only played in Lansing. So not happening.
Yeah. Loved him with the lug nuts. But yeah, it's something. There's enough questions there about his eventual defensive home and his speed where I don't think you want to see him make that jump to the big leagues right away. So I think he's going to be safe as well. Now, depending on what he looks like next year in AAA, you may have a question as far as if you don't protect him again, if you don't add him to the 40-man roster, then he may get taken because he is a natural hitter. But I think this portion, you're probably okay.
I don't follow the draft terribly closely, like the prospects coming up. I follow them once they get drafted because the A's are usually because they're so good at winning so often that they don't usually get to pick so high. So I don't really have a reason to pay attention until they pick 25th or whatever. So who's at the top of the draft for 2023, and who should the A's be targeting? They've been going after position players in the first round of late. We don't know where they'll be drafting necessarily. They got a 16.5% chance to land the top spot, but they could also be drafting 8th. So somewhere between 1 and 8 Where could the A's be going in the first round?
Well, the good news is if you're going somewhere between 1 and 8, you're probably getting a position player because I have maybe 2 pitchers in the top 10 right now. This is one of the better college classes in a long time. And if you think about it, you're 3 years removed from the 2020 draft, reduced to only 5 rounds. Yeah. A lot of the later rounds where you saw the prep players go with the larger bonuses were not there at all. So a lot of those prep prospects went to college. So correspondingly, the college class is very, very good this year. As far as the top pitchers, if you chose to go pitcher, you're looking at either Chase Dollander, the righty out of Tennessee. I have been very impressed. I've actually seen him in person. Fastball sits mid-90s. He can run it up to 99. It's got a lot of ride to it, a lot of run, tons of deception from the delivery. But he pairs that with a really tight horizontal sweepy slider and a curveball with an occasional changeup. So premium command, he is by far like the best college pitching prospect in probably the last 10 years.
Okay.
I mean, phenomenal, clear number 1. So if you get the number 1 pick, there's a very good chance Chase Dollander is the guy, barring some sort of catastrophic injury at Tennessee this year.
All right.
If it's a pitcher and it's not him, you're probably looking at Rhett Lowder from Wake Forest. I have a little bit of hesitation on Wake Forest guys. You have one in the system in Ryan Cusick, simply because, and this is not a knock on those guys, simply because Wake Forest is so good at developing their pitchers and getting everything out of them they possibly can, that it's hard to project a lot of additional improvement from them in the bigs. It's kind of the opposite of the University of Florida. A pitcher coming out of the University of Florida, and there's one that's right outside the top 10 in Hurst and Waldrop. You can absolutely expect them to pick up additional velo, get better with their pitches. The Guardians keep taking pitchers from Florida, and people from Florida think that the Guardians like them. It's like, no, we don't think you do a good job developing pitchers. That's why we're taking them. We can make them better. But if it's a position player, it's a couple SEC guys you're looking at. You're looking at Dylan Cruz from LSU. He's played all over. He's played third base. He's played outfield. I see him as a right fielder. Tons of power to him. He's a little susceptible to elite level stuff. And there's a lot of college prospects. You don't always face elite level stuff, especially with the state of college pitching last year. So, but just very good. Has he doesn't strike out a lot, walks a ton. Again, the power's good. The arm is plus. Why have him in right field? And then if you're looking for an infielder, we talked about kind of a need for infielders in this system. Shortstop Jacob Gonzalez of Ole Miss is going to be just about a no-doubt shortstop unless he outgrows the position. Defensively can make all the plays, both the routine and the highlight ones. It's especially good moving to his backhand side, making plays in the hole, just something tough for a lot of guys to do. And then on offense, tons of contact. Most of his power is pull power right now, so a little bit of development you have to do there, but tons of contact ability for him combined with very, very good defensive ability gives him a high floor, even if he ends up not hitting for a ton of power.
I like it. I'm very intrigued. And I mean, with the college class and where the A's kind of are in the rebuild, it kind of, for me, I think makes sense for them to go after a college bat. Because they already got Geloff and Soderstrom and Waldichuk and Langoliers and a few others. Jordan Diaz, who's another guy that I'm intrigued by at the very least. He's a good pure hitter as well. And with the timeline of how the A's usually go with things, you want somebody who can get there a little bit faster, and that would be a college bat. That's where I'm sitting. I think I'm sitting college bats. You take your pick. Who knows who will be around when the A's end up drafting, but I'm very intrigued in the draft this year, and I'm going to be hounding you so often about just like little tidbits. I'm like, give me something to say for the show. Who are the A's taking?
If you don't watch college baseball, and you're an A's fan, this is maybe the season to watch college baseball.
Yeah.
Just because there's such good players, and you're going to have your pick of so many of them. We'll know more in December which spot you're going to pick in. It's going to be a recurring thing throughout the spring as these guys have one more season to see who moves up and down. But I love the hitting, the college pitching's behind the college hitting, but I absolutely love the college hitting in this class. There's tons of guys They're not all SEC guys. I know what it sounds like from the names I gave. They're not all SEC guys, but there's just a ton of hitting here. I mean, there's infielders, there's outfielders. The one spot where I'm a little questioning this college class is catcher. Not a concern for you, so you're good.
That's fine. That's fine. We got so many friggin' catchers. It's great. We're going to trade one this offseason, and we're going to talk about that here in a second on YouTube. But before we do, thank you so much for listening to Locked On A's and making Locked On A's and Locked On MLB Prospects your first listen of the day. For your second listen today, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts like the two of us. And you can get insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So basically, wherever you're listening to this, go follow Locked On Sports Today and Locked On MLB Prospects. But Lindsay, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. And where can the people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. My show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. You can send your mailbag questions in to either me, the show, or email us, lockedonmlbprospects@gmail.com. We do mailbags every single Monday.
All right. And for me, follow Locked On A's wherever you like to hear podcasts. Also, you can follow Locked On A's on Twitter as long as it exists, and Instagram as well at Locked On A's. I'm at @ByJasonB on Twitter, and that's it for that. So, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. All right. And so with that, let's do the YouTube portion real quick. And
yeah,
we are going to talk about Sean Murphy. I've had some crossovers done with a couple of different hosts where he's been rumored to be, there's been some intrigue surrounding Sean Murphy going to those teams. But let's talk about Sean Murphy. And
on the note of Sean Murphy and where he's going real quick, I have a show from about a month ago where it was a Tuesday called the Tuesday Trade Block. Nothing but Sean Murphy trades. The entire episode, I let listeners submit trades. There's probably 7 or 8 different options. So go in there. If you want to hear some of the possible destinations, go listen to that. But that's not my official prediction, or what I want to see at least.
If you were the A's and you are trading Sean Murphy, 1, where are you trading him? And 2, who is the one prospect that you need back in that trade? Let's hear it, Lindsay.
I am trading him to the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yes.
It's a team you would not probably have not heard him going to yet. And if I can get one player, and we're assuming it's not going to be Corbin Burns. I don't think they're going to make that trade. If you can get one player, their number one prospect is an outfielder, Jackson Churio. Mm-hmm. And so, but given the amount of time he's going to need to get to the bigs, their number 2 prospect is also an outfielder Sal Frelick, a natural center fielder with power, plus defense, good contact ability. I plus to double plus is where that contact ability comes in. And so he would finally answer the center field question that we talked about. I mean, we talked about in this show as far as between Mangum and Pache trying to figure out what to do with center field. Sal Frelick would do it. And because he's not their number 1, you're probably a better chance to get him than you would go into some other organization. They have 4 outfielders in their top 10, and 3 of those are either AAA or major league guys.
I like it.
So plenty of guys there. And absolutely is something where you can go out and you can get a Sal Frelick from them. Or if you want a guy who's already debuted in MLB, go get Garrett Mitchell instead. Mm-hmm. But either way, you can't go wrong getting one of those high defense, elite contact ability outfielders from the Brewers.
I mean, I like the Brewers as a team, and I want them to do better and, maybe even beat the Cardinals, even though I'm currently thinking that he would be a good fit with the Cardinals. He just feels like a Cardinal.
Yeah.
He just feels like a Cardinal to me. And it feels like they would go after and maybe overpay for somebody like Sean Murphy to replace Yadier Molina. But hey, I like the Brewers a lot more. And so if this helps them get some offense going, I am on board. I want him to make Bernie Brewer go down that slide so many times. That death trap of a slide. I want to see it happen.
I want to see reporters get their arms broken on that slide. Keep doing that.
I was listening to another podcast. They were saying that like the week before that, somebody else went down and like a lady reporter, a woman, And that one didn't get covered nearly as much, but somebody else also got hurt doing that. And I think it might have been ribs. And so, yeah, they had like 2 major injuries on this death trap of a slide. And I don't know why they still have it. I mean, it's only been a couple of months, but anyways, that is where you would send him. I'm on board. I think that he's going to get traded. I know that, we trade a lot of guys, and so it makes sense, and he's going to be making money, blah, blah, blah. But also the A's, as we've talked about, have a lot of catching depth in the minor league system. Shea Langoliers is primed and ready to go. May as well just let him go learn on the job.
Bangoliers. I've had listeners call him Bangoliers for his ability to hit home runs.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And Oakland fans have definitely adopted the Bangoliers. I'm not sure who made that up, but I'm on board with Bangoliers.
That's an old Atlanta thing. Atlanta had that for him. Yeah.
Okay. I saw it around, and so I was like, oh, Bangoliers.
There was a little bit of that when he was at Baylor. Like he didn't hit for a ton of power, but he hit just enough and very timely hitting at Baylor. And so that started to get some legs at Baylor, and then Braves fans took off with it. And so Bangoliers became a thing.
Baylor has great colors, I got to say. But that is all that we got for you guys today. Again, thank you, Lindsay, for stopping by. But that's all for today's show. So until next time, go on, celebrate good times, A's fans, and I will talk at you tomorrow.